Yeah, right, cool. So what I've got here, so what I want to show you is how I might go about turning my plan. I've made some notes in the bullet points like we did yesterday, and you've already annotated the actual extract and underlined some quotes and found some devices. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how I might turn that into the beginning of an answer. All right, and then later on, you're going to carry on doing the rest of the answer, okay? So what I've got so far, here are my notes that I want to start off in my first bit. The bit at the beginning where she's, where London was startled by a crime, I want to talk about that. And obviously that's got the AO3 link to Jack the Ripper, which I can get in there quite easily. I want to talk about the fog, I want to talk about the full moon, and I want to talk about the narrative device that we've already discussed of having the maid telling the story. Okay, so this is how I'm going to start. Like I said, I'm going to go straight into it, straight into the talking about the extract. So in the first part of the extract, this is a good way to probably start. So we're starting with the extract as well and not the novel as a whole. In the first part, you can write this down as well if you want, because this might be good for your revision. In the first part of the extract, Stevenson, and don't say Robert, because some of you are using first names, that's not the correct way to do it, uses imagery. So this is where I'm going to talk about the imagery that I've got on my list to create an eerie sense of calm. Now remember we talked about there being a contrast between the calm at the beginning and then you get that jump scare when it goes into the murder later on. So I want to talk about the calm first, the calm before the storm. Eerie sense of calm. He says, now this is where I'm going to get straight into a quote. A fog rolled over the city. Okay, which is lit, and this is where I'm going to embed some quotes. By the classic generic symbol, generic meaning to do with genre, and we're in the horror genre, we were in the gothic genre, of a full moon. So look at how I didn't have to stop and write out that whole big quote. All I've done, I'm embedding the quote. I'm putting it in amongst the sentence that I'm writing. Okay? Which has connotations of, so I'm not just saying he uses a symbol, I'm not just talking about the device, now I'm talking about the connotations, now I'm talking about the effect of it. It has connotations of werewolves, which is related to Hyde, obviously, because we talked about that animal-like aspect to him. Madness. It's often said that people, when the full moon comes out, it draws out all their madness, and horror. Okay? Now, I also want to talk about the narrative device. Okay, so he uses the narrative device of telling the story from the perspective of, let me get a better pen, a spare one. And again, I'm going to embed this quote, perspective of a maidservant. Once you've underlined all your quotes on your on your extract and made your notes, it's going to be easier to embed them, which is another reason why planning is so important. So I've said what the device is, but now I've got to explain the effect of that on the reader. Why is that effective? So what I'm going to say is, using this young female character adds to the sense of dread. And again, I'm thinking of another word for terror here to make it more interesting. As the reader, so the effect on the reader sympathises with her vulnerability imagining they are with her, and then I'm going to get another quote in because I get them in wherever I can. Living, because this is directly taken from the extract, living alone in a house. Okay? Now, what I would go on to say then is that I would go on to talk about how he foreshadows something. So we've got this, even though it's calm, we've also got this foreshadowed something bad is going to happen, because right at the beginning of the extract, Stevenson explains that London was startled by a crime of singular ferocity. Okay, so that's what I would talk about next. And I would link that. I would say the reader would, of course, a Victorian reader would, of course, make that obvious association with Jack the Ripper. And then you've got your AO3 in there as well. Okay? So that links the terror of this novel, of this imaginary world, to the terror in their minds that belongs to the real world. Okay, so that's what I would go on to do next. And that's what I'm going to ask you to do in a minute. And then what I want you to do after that is thinking about the way that I've gone from the extract to my plan to my writing it out. I then want you to have a go at doing that with the second part, where Hyde actually comes in and the murder actually takes place.